Dr. Zixlort's chromatophores rippled with anticipation as the quarantine bay's sterilization cycle completed. The xenobiologist had waited 3 full rotation cycles for clearance to examine the beings rescued from the quantum storm. Through the observation window, 5 bipedal creatures lay on examination tables, their forms eerily similar to several known species, yet subtly wrong in ways that disturbed the Confederate medical team. "Begin recording. Research log 7 Delta," Zixlort said, 4 of his 6 limbs activating different scanning equipment simultaneously. Initial examination of species self-identified as humans from planet Earth. Preliminary data suggests Class 3 intelligence, carbon-based biology, and the primary scanner emitted a shrill alarm before shutting down completely. Zixlort's skin flashed crimson with embarrassment. Recalibrating equipment. Apparent malfunction. The second scanner produced identical results before also failing. By the time the third diagnostic unit short-circuited, Zixlort's skin had cycled through confusion yellow to distress purple. Medical Director Tivrix to quarantine immediately, announced the station's communication system. Repeat, Medical Director Tivrix to quarantine. The medical director arrived moments later, her crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the emergency lights. "Explain," she demanded. "The scanners must be malfunctioning," Zixlort replied, displaying the contradictory readings on a holographic projection. These readings suggest the specimens simultaneously possessed physiological traits of both prey and apex predator species. Their musculature density resembles gravitational adaptation, yet their bone structure suggests moderate gravity evolution. Most concerning, their cellular structure contains both extreme regenerative capabilities and remarkably limited lifespans. Tivrix's crystalline form dimmed slightly, the equivalent of a frown. "Have you activated translator protocols?" "Unnecessary. They're unconscious from rescue sedation and—" "I can hear everything you're saying," said one of the humans, the female with darker pigmentation. She sat up, apparently unaffected by sedation doses, calibrated for beings twice her mass. "Captain Maya Rodriguez, Earth Exploration Vessel Horizon. Your sedatives tickle." Zixlort's chromatophores blanched white with shock. The director's crystal lattice emitted a high-pitched resonance of alarm. "Impossible," Tivrix whispered. "That dosage would immobilize a Kardashian stone bear." Captain Rodriguez shrugged, a curiously fluid motion. "Our medical officer could explain better, but we've evolved alongside thousands of toxic plants and fungi. Most alien pharmaceuticals barely affect us." She glanced at her still unconscious crewmates. "Well, some of us." Johnson always was a lightweight. The director signaled for additional security, while Zixlort approached cautiously, scientific curiosity overcoming trepidation. "Your species profile is contradictory," the xenobiologist explained. "Your epidermis offers minimal protection, yet you display remarkable tolerances to radiation, temperature, and chemical exposure. Your digestive system appears capable of processing compounds toxic to most carbon-based life." Rodriguez smiled, revealing alarmingly pointed incisors alongside flat grinding teeth, another contradictory feature. "We're pretty adaptable. Just 3 days ago, our water reclamation system failed. We survived without water until your ship found us." Zixlort's epidermis cycled through disbelief patterns. 3 days without hydration would kill most known sentient species. "It wasn't comfortable," Rodriguez admitted, examining a minor laceration on her arm that appeared to be visibly closing before their eyes. "But humans evolved to handle deprivation. Our ancestors pursued prey across vast distances through endurance hunting." Tivrix turned to Zixlort, translucent limbs trembling slightly. "Submit preliminary findings to the High Science Council immediately. Full containment protocols remain in effect." Hours later, Zixlort stared in disbelief at the Council's response on the secure terminal. "Findings REGCCED. Equipment malfunction. Evident. Recalibrate library. He also STMs be forward FURT research." The xenobiologist's gaze drifted to the quarantine bay, where Captain Rodriguez was now standing beside the bed of one awakening crewmate, seemingly unconcerned by the multiple fractures the initial scans had detected in her lower appendages. "No malfunction," Sixlorp murmured, initiating a new recording and dispatching requisition orders for advanced research equipment. "The Confederation isn't ready for the truth. We've discovered a species that defies every established principle of evolutionary biology." Log supplemental, Cycle 14 since human arrival, Dr. Sixlorp dictated, manipulating holographic tissue samples with 3 limbs while the others operated microscopy equipment. "The Council has reluctantly authorized expanded research following multiple equipment verification protocols." Behind the observation glass, the 5 humans moved with unsettling vigor despite their recent trauma. Their recovery rate defied all established medicinal models. "Subject designated Lieutenant Dawson presents the most fascinating case," Sixlorp continued. Tissue samples collected upon arrival showed third-degree radiation burns across 22% of epidermis. Current samples show complete cellular regeneration. Estimated healing time reduced by factor of 7 compared to standard recovery models. A soft chime interrupted the recording as Medical Director Tivrix entered, accompanied by a tall, willowy figure draped in the silver robes of the Science Council. "Council Observer Kel Thran wishes to witness your research firsthand," Tivrix announced, her crystalline form vibrating with subtle anxiety frequencies. Kel Thran's elongated digits gestured at the humans beyond the glass. "These specimens have caused considerable disruption, Doctor. 3 council members resigned in protest over continued study rather than immediate quarantine." "With respect, Observer," Sixlorp replied, chromatophores shifting to formal deference patterns. "Humans represent an unprecedented evolutionary pathway. Their homeworld." A tremendous crash from the human quarters cut the explanation short. On the monitoring screens, Engineer Chen had apparently lost his balance while constructing a makeshift device from spare parts. His arm was bent at an unnatural angle, white bone protruding through skin. "Emergency medical response," Tivrix commanded, but Sixlorp raised a restraining limb. "Wait. Observe." On screen, Chen grimaced while Captain Rodriguez examined the compound fracture. After a brief conversation, Rodriguez gripped Chen's wrist and elbow, then, with a swift motion, realigned the bone. Chen's face contorted momentarily before relaxing into what appeared to be mild discomfort rather than the agony such an injury would cause most species. "Primitive setting technique," Tivrix remarked, "but the patient should be in neurogenic shock from pain." "Their nervous system includes remarkable pain suppression mechanisms," Sixlorp explained. "And watch this." The medical team watched in silence as the other humans fashioned a crude splint using materials from their quarters. Within minutes, Chen was moving about, favoring the injury but otherwise functional. "Impossible," Kel Thran whispered. "A Threskin would be incapacitated for a full cycle with such trauma." A new alert sounded, one of the monitoring systems tracking the human's nutritional intake. Dr. Sixlorp manipulated the display to show Chen consuming something. "Are they self-medicating?" Tivrix asked. "More concerning," Sixlorp replied. "They're consuming the standard nutrient packets provided to all rescued species. Those are specifically formulated to be universally non-toxic but provide minimal nutritional value," Kel Thran noted. "No species can subsist on them for more than emergency duration. Humans appear to not merely tolerate but thrive on compounds that would be indigestible to most species," Sixlorp said. "They've consumed these packets for 14 cycles with no ill effects. Moreover, they've requested to sample foods from our galley out of what they term curiosity rather than necessity." On screen, the youngest human, communications specialist Patul, bit into something and immediately spat it out, laughing while the others watched with expressions of amusement. "They're deliberately exposing themselves to potentially toxic substances for entertainment." Tivrix's crystalline structure flickered with incomprehension. "They call it trying new things," Zixlorp explained. When questioned about these behaviors, Lieutenant Dawson used an expression I've been researching. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Their cultural development appears to have embraced their biological adaptability, rather than evolved past its necessity. Kelfran's elongated form seemed to contract slightly. The Council must be informed of these developments immediately. If humans can adapt to or even benefit from exposure to compounds toxic to other species, their potential applications in xenomedicine alone are revolutionary, Zixlorp finished, chromatophores pulsing with excitement. But there's more. Tomorrow, they're scheduled to undergo physical capacity assessments. Based on preliminary observations, I believe we're about to witness abilities that will challenge our most fundamental understanding of biological limitations. The diplomatic reception had been Counselor Vendrat's idea, a controlled introduction of the human visitors to allied species representatives. Security protocols remained at maximum, but the atmosphere was deliberately casual to facilitate cultural exchange. No one anticipated disaster would emerge from a simple hospitality gesture. They call it coffee, Commander Sarah Chen explained to the fascinated Arlaxian ambassador, whose translucent tentacles waved with curiosity around the steaming liquid. It's a plant-based stimulant beverage from Earth, fairly mild by our standards. Dr. Zixlorp, monitoring from nearby, made a mental note to request a sample for chemical analysis. The humans had been permitted to synthesize a limited quantity of their traditional consumables using the station's molecular fabricators, a concession to diplomatic courtesy that the Security Division had protested vigorously. The Arlaxian ambassador dipped a sensory appendage into the dark liquid. The aroma contains compounds similar to Vascarian memory enhancers, it observed through its translator. May I taste? Before Zixlorp could intervene, the ambassador had absorbed a small quantity through specialized membranes. The effect was instantaneous and alarming. The Arlaxian's chromatophore-rich epidermis erupted in pulsating geometric patterns, while its central nerve cluster dilated visibly through the transparent cranial dome. Its translator emitted a cascade of mathematical equations and fragmented poetry for approximately 12 seconds before the ambassador levitated 15 centimeters off the floor, an ability previously undocumented in Arlaxian physiology. Fascinating, the ambassador proclaimed in perfect, untranslated standard. I can perceive the 11th dimension. Your species drinks this regularly. Commander Chen's expression registered confusion mixed with concern, usually before important meetings or early mornings. Across the reception hall, similar scenarios were unfolding with escalating chaos. The Volturian delegate's exoskeleton had developed a momentary transparency after sipping from a human's cup, revealing internal organs in vibrant ultraviolet bioluminescence. 3 Medusan representatives had linked appendages and begun a synchronized movement pattern that their horrified attaché frantically explained was typically reserved for reproductive ceremonies. The station's security alert sounded as Medical Director Tivrix enacted emergency protocols. All non-human personnel report to decontamination immediately. Dr. Zixlorp accessed a nearby terminal, bypassing normal clearance to perform an emergency chemical analysis of the coffee. The results triggered cascading security flags in the xenotoxicology database. Impossible, Zixlorp muttered, chromatophores flickering with disbelief patterns. 2 hours later, an emergency session of the Diplomatic Security Council convened. High Administrator Quvex presided, flanked by medical and security personnel. This substance humans casually consume, Quvex began, multifaceted eyes reflecting distress, contains no fewer than 17 compounds classified as controlled stimulants, psychoactives, or toxins under Confederate regulations. Dr. Zixlorp projected a molecular comparison onto the central display. The compound humans call caffeine bears structural similarities to Tholian nerve agents. What they term theobromine matches restricted performance enhancers banned in 7 sectors. Further research reveals humans routinely consume substances containing capsaicin, chemically analogous to riot control agents used by Confederate peacekeepers. Are they attempting to sabotage diplomatic relations? Security Director Kraz demanded, armored plates bristling. Captain Rodriguez, representing the humans at the session, appeared genuinely perplexed. These substances are completely normal on Earth. Our bodies evolved alongside these plants. Coffee shops are on practically every street corner. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembly. The implications extend beyond diplomatic incidents, Dr. Zixlor continued. Humans have evolved on a planet where constant consumption of what other species classify as narcotics, stimulants, and toxins is not merely survivable, but culturally integrated. Their neurochemistry, detoxification organs, and cellular resilience operate on principles that defy our understanding of biological limitations. The proceedings were interrupted as an Arlaxian diplomatic courier entered, bearing an unprecedented priority communication. The High Ambassador's message was succinct. The Arlaxian conclave wished to establish immediate exclusive trade relations with humans for their cognitive enhancement beverage, and were prepared to offer significant technological exchanges. Administrator Kuvex's expression shifted from concern to calculation. Perhaps, he said slowly, we should reconsider our approach to our human guests. Their biological peculiarities may represent diplomatic opportunities rather than merely security concerns. The antimatter containment breach alarm shattered the station's artificial night cycle, its distinctive three-tone wail indicating catastrophic failure. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout Sector 7, trapping 23 Confederate personnel in rapidly deteriorating conditions. Evacuation protocols enacted. The station AI announced with artificial calm. Antimatter containment at 18% and falling. Sector 7 survival probability 0%. In the command center, Administrator Kuvex's exoskeleton flexed with decision stress. Time until complete containment failure. 17 minutes. Chief Engineer Vrltak responded. Multiple eye stalks focused on different monitoring stations. The isolation fields are failing sequentially. Temperature in affected areas already exceeds 200 degrees Celsius. Radiation levels are unsurvivable. Dr. Zixlorp entered the command center, accompanied by Captain Rodriguez. The human's face displayed an expression Zixlorp had learned indicated concern rather than fear. Your personnel are trapped, Rodriguez asked, scanning the emergency displays. Unavoidable casualties, Security Director Kraz stated flatly. No rescue team could survive those conditions long enough to reach them. Rodriguez activated her communication device. Chen, Dawson, Jackson, gear up. We've got people trapped in a radiation zone with extreme temperatures. Administrator Kuvex's appendages fluttered in alarm. Captain, you misunderstand. No biological entity can survive those conditions. The atmosphere itself is partially ionized. We've handled worse, Rodriguez replied, already moving toward the exit. Our bodies can manage short exposures to extreme conditions. We'll need your station schematics and emergency equipment. 13 minutes later, Dr. Zixlorp watched in scientific disbelief as the monitoring systems tracked 3 human life signs moving through Sector 7. According to all sensors, they were traversing an environment that should have killed them within seconds. Impossible, murmured Chief Medical Officer Tivrix. Crystal structure vibrating with emotional dissonance. The radiation alone. Their bone density provides surprising radiation shielding, Zixlorp explained, chromatophores shifting with excitement. And their cellular repair mechanisms operate more efficiently under stress, a counterintuitive adaptation. On screen, Lieutenant Dawson's vital signs spiked as she lifted a collapsed support beam that would require mechanical assistance for most Confederate species. Engineer Chen bypassed a security door using techniques that should have been impossible with radiation-compromised electronics. Marine Sergeant Jackson physically carried 2 unconscious Medusan scientists through a chamber where the temperature gauge read 173 degrees Celsius. Core critical. Detonation imminent. Warn the station eye. They're not going to make it, Security Director Kraz stated flatly. Prepare for loss of Sector 7. The command center fell silent as the countdown to containment failure reached 0. The station shuddered, but instead of catastrophic decompression, emergency klaxons downgraded to secondary alert status. Containment restored, the AI announced. Antimatter stabilization in progress. From the security feeds came Engineer Chen's trained voice. Manual override successful. Someone might want to update their emergency protocols, though. Your backup systems are garbage. When the rescue team finally emerged from the decontamination chamber 2 hours later, their appearance shocked the Confederate medical staff. Dawson's exposed skin showed severe radiation burns. Jackson limped from what appeared to be a partial tendon rupture, and Chen's right arm displayed symptoms of significant nerve damage. Yet all three remained conscious and functional. You require immediate medical stasis, Tevrix insisted, scanning equipment registering critical damage to multiple organ systems. Just need some water, protein, and sleep, Jackson responded, helping a rescued Threskin engineer toward a medical pod. We'll be operational again in 48 hours. In the observational medical bay that evening, Administrator Kuvex watched silently as the human's injuries visibly improved hour by hour. Tissue regenerated at rates that violated established biological principles. They shouldn't have survived, Kuvex said quietly to Dr. Zixlorp. According to every scientific principle we understand, those conditions were unsurvivable. Perhaps, Zixlorp replied, chromatophores pulsing thoughtfully. We should reconsider what survivable means. Humans evolved on a planet that would qualify as a death world by Confederate classification standards. Their biology isn't exceptional. It's the logical result of adaptation to conditions we've never had to face. Across the station, the rescued personnel, representing 7 different Confederate species, gathered in an informal ceremony, pledging personal life debts to their human saviors. The cultural implications spread through the station's communications network, igniting discussions across every deck and sector. The narrative was shifting. These strange beings with their contradictory biology were no longer merely scientific curiosities or potential threats. They were becoming heroes. The Drecker Collective's attack came without warning. Their stealth vessels, utilizing illegal phase shift technology, materialized directly inside the station's defensive perimeter. Within minutes, security barriers throughout the diplomatic sector fell to precision strikes. Multiple hull breaches on decks 14 through 17, reported Security Officer Lax Vaughn, multifaceted eyes rapidly processing tactical displays. Drecker boarding parties have bypassed primary security checkpoints. They're targeting the Xenobiology Research Center. Administrator Kuvex activated emergency protocols as Confederate security forces mobilized. Evacuate all research personnel to secure sectors. Priority 1. Protect the human biological data. Dr. Zixlor hurriedly transferred critical research files to secure backup systems. The humans had integrated surprisingly well into station operations over the past weeks, with Commander Chen assisting engineering teams and Marine Surgeon Jackson training with security forces. The Drecker never commit raids of this magnitude without specific targets, Security Director Kraz noted grimly. Intelligence suggests they've learned of our human guests. Surveillance feeds from across the station flickered onto the command center's main display. Confederate security forces engaged Drecker raiders in multiple locations, but were clearly outmatched by the pirates' advanced weaponry and ruthless efficiency. Then the feed from Laboratory Complex B captured something extraordinary. Sergeant Jackson had been trapped in the complex when security barriers activated. Now she faced 3 Drecker fighters alone. The pirates, hulking figures in biomechanical combat armor, carried weapons capable of penetrating Confederate military-grade shielding. We should divert rescue teams, suggested Officer Lax Vaughn. That human cannot possibly. The words died as everyone watched Jackson's response to the threat. Her pupils dilated visibly even on the security feed. Epidermal blood vessels constricted, causing a noticeable pallor. Her posture shifted subtly as muscle groups tensed across her body. The lead Drecker fired. Jackson moved with impossible speed, evading the energy blast and closing distance in a fluid motion that the camera struggled to track properly. The Drekker fighter, a member of a species renowned for its strength, swung a weaponized appendage at the human. Jackson caught it mid-swing. Frame-by-frame analysis, Dr. Zixlorp requested urgently. The footage slowed, revealing micro-expressions of surprise on the Drekker's features as its attack was halted by a being half its size. What followed defied explanation. Jackson executed combat techniques with precision and explosive power that her previous training sessions had never revealed. She moved with a coordination and speed that suggested neural processing capabilities far beyond documented human parameters. Her muscles are operating at approximately 80% above baseline capacity, Zixlorp noted, analyzing biometric data. Core temperature elevated, blood oxygen saturation maximized. Perception response time decreased by 47%. When a support beam collapsed, pinning Jackson's leg, she displayed pain tolerance that shocked even those familiar with human resilience. Despite a compound fracture clearly visible on medical scans, she freed herself and continued fighting, eventually securing the laboratory and its personnel until Confederate forces arrived. How? Administrator Kuvex demanded later in the medical bay, where Jackson was undergoing treatment. Your performance exceeded every parameter we've measured. Adrenaline, Jackson explained through gritted teeth as medical technicians set her broken bones. Epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol, stress hormones, fight or flight response. Our bodies have emergency systems that activate under threat. Dr. Zixlorp's research team worked through 3 consecutive rest cycles analyzing blood samples taken during and after the incident. The findings triggered security classifications at the highest levels. The human stress response represents an evolutionary adaptation, unlike anything in Confederate records, Zixlorp explained to the hastily convened Military Advisory Council. Their bodies maintain a baseline operating capacity well below maximum potential, but can temporarily access significantly enhanced capabilities during crisis situations. You're describing a natural berserker mechanism, noted General Vaxher incredulously. No evolved species should possess such a trait without catastrophic psychological consequences. Humans have developed complex neurological structures to regulate these responses, Zixlorp countered, displaying comparative brain scans. Their limbic systems and prefrontal cortex maintain remarkable control even during full activation of stress responses. Across the station, rumors spread rapidly about the demon species who grew stronger when threatened. The captured Drekker raiders refused to be held in the same detention block as Jackson, claiming through translators that she was not natural and becomes death-touched when blooded. In a classified section of the station, Confederate military observers reviewed combat footage with growing strategic interest. A species with natural crisis enhancement abilities represented unprecedented military potential. The implications extend beyond warfare, Dr. Zixlorp cautioned during a private meeting with Administrator Kuvex. Humans evolved these traits not primarily for combat, but for survival in adverse conditions. Their entire physiology is designed to adapt and overcome. The question we should be asking is not what humans can do for us militarily, but what their existence tells us about the universe's capacity for evolutionary ingenuity. The quarantine alert from Outpost Gamma 7 arrived during third shift. Within hours, similar reports cascaded across the Confederate communication network from 3 adjacent sectors. Analysis confirms it's the xenovirus strain K12, Chief Medical Officer Tivrix announced to the Emergency Council. Her crystalline form vibrated with frequencies that indicated extreme concern. The pathogen was apparently released during archaeological excavations on Terrace IV. Administrator Kuvex's exoskeleton flexed with decision stress. Casualties. 8,000 confirmed, spreading exponentially, Tivrix replied. The virus reconfigures host cellular structures at the molecular level. No known treatment has proven effective. Dr. Zixlorp studied the virus schematics with growing alarm. This matches extinct pathogens documented in the precursor archives. Their civilization may have collapsed due to this very contagion. Implement full quarantine protocols, ordered Kuvex. All non-essential travel between Confederate sectors is suspended effective immediately. As the Council dispersed to enact emergency measures, Captain Rodriguez approached Hevrix with an unexpected question. Have you tested whether humans are susceptible? 26 hours later, the results defied explanation. Blood samples from all 5 humans demonstrated complete resistance to the pathogen. More astonishingly, samples containing both human blood and the virus showed gradual degradation of the viral structures. Not only are they immune, Dr. Zixlorp explained to the incredulous medical council, their immune systems actively neutralize the pathogen. The implications are revolutionary. When Rodriguez volunteered her crew as emergency medical workers in affected areas, the proposal triggered heated debate among Confederate officials. Ultimately, necessity overwhelmed caution. The pandemic was spreading faster than containment measures could be implemented. 3 days later, Dr. Zixlorp received priority access to data from the quarantine zones. The humans not only remained unaffected while treating the infected, but patients in their direct care showed marginally improved outcomes. Most puzzling, environmental testing revealed the humans were carrying the pathogen. It simply had no effect on their physiology. Zixlorp's research team worked without rest, analyzing human blood, tissue, and microbiome samples under maximum containment protocols. The findings proved so extraordinary that verification required specialized equipment rushed from the Confederate Central Research Hub. Council Session Emergency Override announced the station AI as Zixlorp's findings were transmitted to Confederate leadership. The response was immediate, a direct holographic conference with the High Science Directorate itself. Your findings cannot be correct, stated High Director Zelvax, 12 sensory appendages writhing with agitation. No evolved species should contain such microbiological diversity without systemic collapse. The data is verified. Zixlorp replied, chromatophores displaying confidence patterns. Humans host approximately 100 trillion microorganisms representing thousands of species, bacteria, fungi, and viruses that live in symbiotic relationships within their bodies. This microbiome functions as an extended immune system, constantly training their adaptive responses. The medical implications spread rapidly through Confederate scientific networks. Species previously hostile to human inclusion now desperately sought human biological samples. The Endere Conclave, renowned for their biomedical expertise, offered unprecedented technological exchanges for access to human microbiome research. In the station's primary laboratory, Captain Rodriguez watched with bemusement as Dr. Zixlorp examined a seemingly mundane skin sample. Your species evolved on a planet with such microbial diversity and competition that your bodies developed not to eliminate competitive microorganisms, but to form alliances with them, Zixlorp explained. While Confederate species evolved in environments with strict microbial regulation, humans became walking ecosystems. Is that why your people look so shocked when we tell them about our appendix? Rodriguez asked. Indeed. An organ that appears to exist primarily as a reservoir for beneficial bacteria contradicts our understanding of evolutionary efficiency, Zixlorp replied. Confederate medical philosophy has focused on creating sterile environments and eliminating microbial interaction. Your biology suggests the opposite approach. Controlled exposure creating resilience might be superior. As pandemic response teams incorporated human biological insights into treatment protocols, conspiracy theories inevitably emerge. The isolationist coalition released unauthorized transmissions, suggesting humans had engineered the outbreak to demonstrate their value. The Vexteri ambassador publicly questioned whether humans represented a deliberate biological weapon rather than a natural species. Yet, as mortality rates began to decline in treatment centers utilizing human-derived protocols, such voices found diminishing audiences. The pandemic that threatened Confederate civilization now seemed destined to become the catalyst for its greatest medical revolution. In his private research journal, Dr. Zixlorp recorded an observation too speculative for official reports. The most remarkable aspect of human biology may be its inherent contradictions. They thrive not despite constant microbial warfare, but because of it. Their greatest weakness, susceptibility to countless pathogens, created their greatest strength, unparalleled adaptability. One cannot help but wonder what other aspects of Confederate biological understanding might benefit from embracing such paradoxical thinking. The Grand Assembly Chamber had not hosted all 127 Confederate member species simultaneously in 7 centuries. Its adaptive architecture strained to accommodate the diverse environmental requirements, from methane-breathing Nazi delegates suspended in anti-gravity fields to the crystalline folians in pressurized thermal chambers. At the chamber's center stood the 5 humans, now the focal point of the most significant classification debate in Confederate history. This extraordinary session will determine the status of species designate human within our Confederation, announced High Administrator Quevex, whose recent promotion acknowledged his successful management of multiple human-related crises. I remind all delegates that emotional projection dampeners are active. We seek reasoned discourse, not reactionary sentiment. The debate began with the preservationist faction, led by Elder Kavoth of the ancient Vushar Collective. Our predictive models designated humans an evolutionary impossibility, Kavoth stated, multiple eyes blinking in sequence. Their biology represents a chaotic pathway that violates fundamental principles of competitive selection. They exhibit traits that should be mutually exclusive: endurance with strength, intelligence with aggression, individual survival with collective cooperation. Kavoth projected a holographic representation of human evolutionary history. Most concerning, they evolved on a planet that meets 17 of 22 criteria for classification as a death world. Their biological development suggests a species optimized for environmental dominance regardless of cost, precisely the profile our founders established as an existential threat. The military alliance contingent spoke next, represented by General Vaxer, whose scarred exoskeleton bore testament to centuries of service. The combat capabilities demonstrated by a single untrained human female against Drecker raiders cannot be dismissed, the general stated bluntly. Their natural crisis enhancement abilities, pain suppression mechanisms, and adaptability to hostile environments represent unprecedented tactical advantages. The strategic implications of alliance with such a species are self-evident. The chamber erupted in overlapping communication streams as multiple factions attempted to present simultaneously. Administrator Quevex intervened, establishing a sequential protocol that gave voice to diverse perspectives. The medical consortium praised human microbiome complexity as the key to defeating the pandemic. The theological assembly questioned whether humans represented divine intervention in evolutionary processes. The commercial guild calculated potential economic benefits from human biological patents alone at 14.6 trillion credits over the next century. Dr. Zixlorp, now recognized across the Confederation for pioneering human research, presented the scientific perspective with characteristic precision. Colleagues, I present not opinions but verified observations. Zixlorp began, chromatophores displaying formal academic patterns. Human biology appears contradictory only when viewed through our established evolutionary framework. The xenobiologist activated a complex holographic display comparing Earth to standard Confederate worlds. Humans evolved on a planet with extreme environmental diversity, from Arctic regions at -50 degrees Celsius to deserts exceeding 50 degrees. Their atmospheric pressure variations, gravitational stress, radiation exposure, and biological competition created selection pressures unlike any environment that produced Confederate member species. The display shifted to human cellular structures. What appears inefficient, their redundant organ systems, seemingly wasteful energy metabolism, and constant microbial warfare, represents adaptations to conditions we've never experienced. Their generalized resilience rather than specialized adaptation is not an evolutionary mistake, but an alternative pathway optimized for unpredictable environments. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, the first human to address the assembly directly. "We understand your concerns. From your perspective, we're biological anomalies, simultaneously fragile and resilient, in ways that seem contradictory. But consider this. Perhaps the universe allows multiple paths to sentience, each with different advantages and limitations." The chamber fell silent, a rare occurrence in Confederate proceedings, as Rodriguez continued. "We don't seek to disrupt your civilization. We offer partnership based on complementary strengths. Where your species developed specialized adaptations for stable environments, humans evolved as generalists in a chaotic one. Together, we're stronger than either alone." The silence extended uncomfortably until Elder Kavoth spoke again. "Your eloquence is appreciated, human. Yet words cannot verify biological intentions. The assembly requires empirical demonstration." Rodriguez nodded to Dr. Zixlorp, who activated a secure data link. "With the administrator's permission, I propose a practical demonstration of human capabilities under controlled conditions." What followed became known as the demonstration of 7 capacities. For 4 hours, the human crew performed a series of tasks deemed physiologically impossible by Confederate standards. Commander Chen solved complex engineering problems while deprived of oxygen at intervals that would cause brain damage in most species. Lieutenant Dawson demonstrated cellular regeneration by allowing medical staff to create and document the healing of a deliberate wound. Most dramatically, Captain Rodriguez voluntarily endured pain stimulation at levels that induced immediate unconsciousness in Confederate test subjects. As the demonstration concluded, the Assembly's emotional dampeners struggled to contain the collective response of 127 species, confronting a fundamental challenge to their understanding of biological possibility. The implications extend beyond classification, Dr. Zixlorp stated in the ensuing silence. Humans represent an evolutionary path that succeeds not despite inefficiency and contradiction, but because of it. Their existence suggests our understanding of biological limitations requires complete reconsideration. The voting process took 7 hours, the longest classification deliberation in Confederate history. The outcome was unprecedented: creation of an entirely new taxonomic category specifically for humans. The orbital approach to Earth marked the culmination of a journey unprecedented in human history. The Confederate diplomatic vessel **, Harmonious Convergence **, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its massive form dwarfing the 5 human crew members who had inadvertently changed the course of galactic politics. "Nervous?" Dr. Zixlorp asked Captain Rodriguez as they observed Earth through the command deck's viewing portal. "Terrified," she admitted, a response Zixlorp had come to recognize as characteristic human honesty. "We left on a routine exploration mission. We're returning with news that will fundamentally alter human civilization." The xenobiologist's chromatophores rippled with sympathy patterns. "Your species handles paradigm shifts remarkably well. Your historical records show consistent adaptation to revolutionary changes. Another bizarre human trait for your research." Rodriguez smiled. "Indeed. Your publications on human psychology suggest your brains are uniquely structured to integrate contradictory information, perhaps another adaptation to your chaotic evolutionary environment." The formal induction ceremony had been conducted before their departure from Confederate space. The 5 humans stood before representatives of all member species as Administrator Kuvex officially designated Homo sapiens as the first and only member of a new classification, adaptive apex species. Now they carried technologies beyond humanity's dreams and a diplomatic package that would forever change Earth's future. The transmission of first contact protocols had preceded their arrival, giving Earth governments 72 hours to prepare for the most significant event in human history. In his private laboratory aboard the vessel, Dr. Zixlorp finalized the most important scientific work of his career. Evolutionary Paradox: The Illogical Success of Human Biology, integrated thousands of research points collected over the past cycles. The manuscript had already been accepted by the prestigious Galactic Science Academy, with preliminary reviews suggesting it would revolutionize multiple scientific disciplines. The central thesis challenged fundamental Confederate understanding of evolutionary processes. Specialized adaptation represented only one path to success. Humans demonstrated that generalized resilience, seemingly inefficient when resources were plentiful, provided superior outcomes in unpredictable environments. The implications extended beyond biology into engineering, computational systems, governance, and philosophical approaches to complexity. Captain Rodriguez joined Zixlorp in the observation lounge as the vessel established orbit around Earth. Below them, the blue-green planet rotated serenely, unaware of how its status in the galaxy had transformed. "Your world is beautiful," Zixlorp noted. "Chaotic and extreme by Confederate standards, but beautiful nonetheless. It made us what we are," Rodriguez replied. "Every environmental stress, every pathogen, every predator, they all shaped our biology in ways we never fully appreciated until seeing ourselves through your eyes." "The irony is profound," Zixlorp said. "Confederate species developed in environments that rewarded specialization and efficiency. We eliminated environmental stressors, pathogens, and competition wherever possible. We considered this progress. And then you met humans. Indeed, your species thrived not despite adversity, but because of it. Your immune systems became robust through constant challenge. Your physiological redundancies provided resilience where our efficiency created vulnerability. Your cognitive flexibility evolved through navigating contradictions rather than eliminating them. The communication system activated with notification of an incoming transmission from Earth's newly formed Unified Response Directorate. In moments, they would begin the process of introducing Earth to the galactic community. There's one human trait I still find most fascinating, Zixlorp said before accepting the transmission. It isn't biological at all. What's that? Hope, Zixlorp replied, chromatophores shifting to patterns expressing deep appreciation. Most intelligent species evolve to anticipate the worst outcomes as a survival mechanism. Confederate psychology considers pessimism the rational default for any sentient being. Yet humans possess an irrational optimism, a capacity for hope in situations where probability suggests despair is warranted. Rodriguez smiled. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? Precisely. When Confederate species encountered hardship, we developed technologies to eliminate it. When humans faced challenges, you developed biological and psychological adaptations to endure and overcome them. You embraced life's fundamental chaos rather than attempting to eliminate it. As Earth's representatives established communication, Zixlorp observed the humans with renewed appreciation. Their biology had initially appeared contradictory, inefficient, and illogical. Now it represented nature's greatest experiment in adaptability, proving that sometimes evolutionary success makes no logical sense at all. The transmission connected, and humanity took its first step into a wider universe that had only just begun to comprehend the extraordinary species emerging from a planet that by all Confederate standards should have produced nothing but primitive organisms struggling for survival rather than beings poised to transform galactic civilization through their illogical, contradictory, and ultimately magnificent biology.